Hey everybody, welcome to Wild, Creative, and Confident, a video interview series where you can learn from the most inspiring industry leaders on how you can use your passion and creativity to design the life and business of your dreams. I'm your host, Sarah Marie Thompson, the creative success coach from wildandcreative.com. And today I have a very special guest. Chloe Rain is with us today. She's a life, artistry, and business mentor. And she has also spent 5 years being professionally trained as a modern day shaman. And I would love her to actually just dive into that whole thing a little bit and tell us all about your shamanic work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, just a little background. So I had a near 15 career in executive management and real estate development. And I was one of, literally the only females at my level. And so initially when I started getting into the life coaching world, I thought my calling was to do executive coaching for women professionals. But my deeper calling and what the universe had in store for me was much greater. And so I essentially had a health crisis, was diagnosed with a severe autoimmune disease that sent me on this path of self-inquiry, which led me to the shamanic path, which I was probably always headed in that direction anyways, but coming from such, the modern Western existence, it was a little shocking to myself. But yeah, so I felt a calling to go to Peru. It wasn't on my bucket list. When I arrived there, it was like poof, like everything changed. Like internally, I know part of your foundational is Mother Nature, and it was literally like the shaman said, "Oh, the mountains are speaking to you." And I go, it was the strangest thing anyone had ever said to me, except for as soon as it was said, I was like, the mountains have always talked to me.
Mm-hmm. Like you finally realized your really powerful gifts.
Yeah, which had been there all along, and had been tapping me on the shoulder, and I was like, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. And gratefully, when your gifts start speaking more loudly to you, the good news is like they never really go away. They never go so far away that you can't get back to center. Mm-hmm. So I started training with the shamans in Peru, the descendants of the Incas. And then I live in North America. I returned to North America and then actually started training with the Sante Sioux tribe and specifically focused on stone medicine and plant medicine.
Cool. It sounds awesome. I mean, you don't meet too many shamans, right? So we're very excited for you to be on here. I want to ask you right away, since this is such a big part, since the series is such a big part of, inspiration and creativity, when did creativity really start for you? Was it in your later years or?
Well, I love this question because so often recently, like literally even earlier today, someone who knew me 20 plus years ago, because I was living on the West Coast, I've recently returned to the East Coast, was like, "Oh, I always knew you were this way. I always knew you were spiritual. I always knew you were an artist." And I was like, well, I never knew. It wasn't until my photography kind of took me into a place where people started calling me a photography and an artist. And I was like, not me. But then in one of my recent moves, specifically, I came across my 3rd grade folder. And in my own handwriting, it said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a photographer and a writer." And I thought, dang, if I hadn't taken a 20-year detour, like what could I be doing right now in my life? So the answer is both. Apparently, I've always had creativity, and I, as you do, believe that everyone is creative. Like you are alive, therefore you are a creative being. Therefore, anything you do through your soul expression or expressing your life force creation energy means you're creative. It might take your very smart brain a little while to catch up and go, oh, yeah, I am creative. I like creating stuff. And allow yourself to claim that, consciously. But I bet unconsciously it's probably living inside of you, just like it lived inside of me for so long, just like dying for me to, give it some time and some energy.
So do you think that deep down you really always knew that you would get to the place that you're at today? I mean, deep down?
Deep down, absolutely. Deep.
Very deep.
Deep. And that's the beauty of who I'm being now in the world. And I believe everyone is capable of coming here. But now it's so natural. Everything's natural. The more natural I can be, the more freedom I have, the more grace and joy I have in my life. Mm-hmm. But there's the honest perspective I want to say to anyone watching, which is, I had to cross all the thresholds of fear and breaking the norms, as everyone else, I believe, at least who's been educated in our Western world, you probably might have been carrying a lot of rules, structures, belief systems that you didn't even realize weren't yours. So I had to uncover a lot to get to, yes, what had always been there. Again, that's the good news, is like, this isn't about recreating yourself. It's about going down to your true essence, and it's always there. So,
okay, so I know that you just talked about really finding what you've already always had along. So I want to quickly jump into the idea of receiving then. So how have you been able to really allow yourself to receive, and was it always like that for you? And I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about everything you've really ever wanted in your life, even finances, right? Love, finances, anything you call abundance. Has that always come naturally to you, or did you really have to dig deep for that as well?
Both. The answer is both. So in my previous life, very much of my masculine, very much a powerful businesswoman, I manifested a lot of pretty amazing things. It did take a toll on my health. It took a toll on my life force. Mm-hmm. Because the way I was going about it wasn't natural to me inherently. Like, it might be natural to some other woman, but it wasn't natural to me inherently. I was forcing and pushing and making myself show up. So receiving, actually, one of my favorite things of all time is a genius is allowing to receive from the universe. The I Ching. That's from the I Ching. And that triggered something in me because I've always considered myself very smart. So to go into the feminine, to a place of allowing to receive, was kind of foreign to me at that point in my life where I had put all these very masculine structures in place. So in learning to receive, I had to start with very simple things, which a big breakthrough. I'm just going to share this little tip, and maybe people have seen it before, but when somebody called me out, they said, notice your breath. Breath is a beautiful acknowledgement of your uniqueness, because no one breathes your breath. No one every time you breathe out, you're expressing your creative life force. And they said, notice your breath. Okay, what do you mean? Well, notice your in breath. Now notice your out breath. Do you intake, meaning receive? Are you allowing yourself to receive as much as you're giving out? And for a long time, all I did was focus on my breath, because it was that simple and that clear that it was hard for me to allow in to receive.
And so many people hold their in breath or their out breath, right? And it's one of those things that people don't really, I mean, unless you're asked a question on it, you're not as, you're not thinking about that all the time, unless you're doing yoga or something like that, you're more concentrated. But, that definitely, I'm glad you brought that up, because that really is a great tool that people can use all the time, that at least gets them started on allowing more in, right?
It triggers the conscious mind to be like, the question is, are you good at receiving? And you can answer that question, yes, of course, I'm very good at receiving. Notice your breath. Notice your breath. Also, notice, do you enjoy compliments, especially as a woman? Do you enjoy compliments? Do you allow yourself to receive compliments? Right there, simple, but speaks to how much you are allowing yourself to receive. And so in that way, I had to unlearn a lot of things in order to be in a healthy balance. Is a strange word for me because I'm a very passionate person, so I don't necessarily always agree with balance. But sustainable living means that the giving and taking, the receiving and output should be in balance. It's a sustainable generating life force versus, using myself as an example, the one where you're always expending. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily getting back as much as you're receiving.
Apart from what we were just talking about really noticing your breath, is there another method that you might have that you could share with those that are watching that can really help them, allow into their life, and really can help them, just be an open vessel for receiving?
Yeah. So the receiving aspect, and especially in receiving money, my go-to would be contemplate generosity. Like, contemplate, what does generosity mean to you? Contemplate, can you think of any time in your life that you received generosity and it felt expansive to you? Because a lot of times we kind of clamp down around generosity. We don't know how to receive it. We don't know how to take it. Whoa, that was very generous. And all along, as I was building on my spirituality, because I believe spirituality is a skill. You get better and better at it. You feel more and more connected as you practice your skill of spirituality. Along the way, many different mentors and many different ancient texts and many different readings that I was taking in would talk about tithing. Not to mention, I'd heard of tithing from a very religious perspective, right? And it triggered me always, tithing. I associated it very much with, passing the plate at church. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really feel like a way for me to connect to the divine. And then there are a series of things going on in my life. The tithing came back up. I was given a book. I'll just say it, the 4 Spiritual Principles of Prosperity, I believe, is the name of the book. And there it was, right in the beginning again, tithing. But this time I could claim it for myself, because it's not necessarily, at least in my world, it's not necessarily about tithing 10% to God. First, I learned what it was to pay myself. It sounds like a standard thing that you should have implemented as an entrepreneur, but check yourself and say, am I paying myself first? Mm-hmm.
And not paying for the stuff that you need to live, right? I mean, even if you can pay yourself at the beginning, right? $20, whatever, every paycheck, whatever it is you're doing, right?
Right. And the funny thing about tithing is that 10%, it can be to anyone who gives you spiritual food, or anywhere you get spiritual food. And it's 10% of the $1.25 you got that, Verizon gave you back in a credit of taxes or something. and you tithe on that $1.25. And it's amazing how this works. And you give back to where you have spiritual food, because it's learning generosity. It's that practice of what does it feel like to give from a place of knowing that I am going to always be receiving. Mm-hmm. That this is not a finite resource. This is an infinite resource. And so therefore, I always feel that I have enough to give. So you start with the 10%. And I don't want to say that I'm preaching to anyone, please, but I was like, I kind of was, the first time I tried this, I'm like, all right, I'm desperate. I'll try anything. I started with 10% and quickly was able to go to 20%. And it did feel good. It felt expansive. It felt like I was paying it forward. I knew it was coming from me, and I wasn't so attached any longer to where it was going to come from. So yeah, that is like probably the number one tool. And you try it on your, your $2.50 and change that someone hands you back. See what it feels like to not put that back in your wallet, but, give it at the extra tip to the waitress, or, pay it forward in the drive-thru, that kind of thing.
Thank you very much for sharing that, because I think that people often think that tithing only means that you are giving 10% to a charity, right? I think that is the misconception. So can you tell us, what has been your biggest achievement to date so far?
Well, bringing it back a little bit to creativity, I wanted to come up with something like, wow, my biggest achievement today. But I'm just going to be really honest, because I wrote an article about that this year. My biggest achievement today wasn't probably what everyone would have thought. It wasn't followers on Instagram or how much money I brought in one month. It wasn't anything like that. It is now having 2 pieces that were accepted into juried art shows, and to see my art up on a wall in a gallery.
Awesome.
It's like, holy crap.
An amazing milestone.
It really is, because the person I was not that long ago would have cringed if you called me an artist. Mm-hmm. It felt like you had just, labeled me with a death sentence. And now it's not so much that, like, I need, although it'd be lovely to travel the world with like an art show, it's just acknowledging that you can decide to change yourself, and within a relatively short period of time, you can be a whole new person. Mm-hmm. And you can go yeah, I like myself like this. Like, I like that I can have a piece of art. I like that I've allowed myself to imagine that could be possible for me.
And do you think that you got to that point because you really started listening to maybe like your inspired thought? We all have inspirations coming to us all the time, but sometimes, just like listening to the mountains, right? They've always been talking to you, but until you are open to receiving inspired thought, you don't care, or you don't want to hear it, or you're not open to receiving that information, right? So
yeah. And one of my biggest things when things really just started to change is don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. When something makes you feel icky, it's not going to go away. When you think you've made a decision for the best and you quickly realize, like, ooh, I was wrong, the faster you can be honest with yourself and shift that direction and the momentum of that direction, the easier it's going to be. And that is when surprising opportunities show up for you. Mm-hmm. Let me just give an example for that. This is actually my second endeavor as an entrepreneur. So I'm a 2-time entrepreneur. But way back in the day, before I got into real estate development, my passion was interior design. I started my own interior design business literally within 3 months, and I had clients. I have this like total, white-faced, like awareness of, oh, I love interior design. I do not love running an interior design business. And thank God I didn't lie to myself and keep trying to build my business. Like, I was only 3 months in, right? And here I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to tell my family? How am I going to tell all my friends? Because I've been touting myself as an interior designer. How am I going to tell them that, like, oops, I changed my mind? But because I was so certain inside my being that I had actually accidentally taken myself on the wrong path, I don't remember because this was like back in 2004, but literally someone, a real estate developer, wrote me a $10,000 check to leave my business behind and come on board with them and start flipping houses. And I know that energetically speaking, it was because I had become like so certain within myself that I wasn't going to lie to anybody, and I wasn't going to lie to myself that I was on the wrong path. And because of that internal honesty, that internal energetic honesty, I do believe that's why an opportunity presented itself almost immediately. That put me on a path that I was really excited about for a long time. So to bring that back to the artwork, people kept complimenting me on my photography. I'm technically not a very good photographer, and there are amazing photographers out there in the world. But when I started to allow myself to receive the compliments, it was actually a client of mine who suggested that I apply to the first juried show that I actually got accepted in. And I said, what the hell? And again, so you don't know where it's going to come from. But if you're being honest with yourself, you're open. You're open to something showing up and surprising you.
And that honesty also, I think, is really just listening to your intuition, right? And being okay with that. Instead of, I like that you said that, your interior design business didn't work out in a sense, because I had almost the exact same story a few years back, although I kept with my business for about, 6, 7, 8 years. But, I got to that point where I said, I love what I'm doing. I love it. I'm happy every day about my work, but I don't like working with the people. Like, I don't like working with the, how an artistic market can get, right? Especially in real estate too, right? And, it's only when you really check in with yourself and say, okay, like it's okay that I love what I'm doing, but if I don't love the path that I'm on, it's okay to step back and take time out or shift gears, right? So it doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you didn't succeed, right? I mean, family and friends, that's a whole other story, but it's really just that story that we tell ourselves that, when we go to tell our family, that didn't work out for us. If we know in our hearts that we did it the best that we could, and also we made that educated decision to go a different route, then, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. If there's anyone out there watching this, because there seems to be a lot of cookie cutter stuff going on in our industry. And it's probably been going along for, all the time. But speaking to creativity, speaking to being joyful in your life, speaking to being able to receive abundantly and have the freedom and the joy that you're seeking, it is not about following somebody else's system perfectly to a T. It is about hearing yourself and becoming to trust yourself enough that you can hear that voice that says, we're on the wrong path. And it might be frightening, but you know that you can't ignore that information. You know that ignoring that information is only going to take you on a detour that you have to you'll scramble later to recover from. And again, it might not be what your colleagues are doing. It might not be what people are, posting on Facebook, but if there's something within you saying, I need to figure out what my thing is, or I need to figure out how to do this differently so I can feel in integrity, that's the money ticket. That's where the awesome stuff is for you personally. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is for you personally, but I know it's that voice that's got the information for you.
Definitely. Like, I've even shared this story many times before. You know, when I first got into the coaching world, I was working with just a more like a hardcore business coach that really kind of pushed me into the direction of taking out all the creative stuff out of my website. And at the time I was like, okay, like, obviously if you're going to say this works, right? But I mean, honestly, it was very depleting, and it really took me a long time to kind of shift gears again, because that so wasn't me. You know, so I always tell everybody, you know, if you're into cats, put cats all over your website. You know, if you're into nature, put nature all over your website. You know, make your website so unbelievably you that there is no competition, right? Because
I love that.
There's no cookie cutter, right? So,
yeah. I mean, my parents are always like, why don't you, the angry cat people that made all the money, like, why don't you do angry cat? I'm like, if it was that simple, I would do angry. But if that is your thing, to your point, like, yeah, like do the wild cats, be the wild cat lady. That's more interesting. That's more attractive.
It's gonna pull in an interesting niche, right? You're gonna have those people that are like, oh yeah, I'm down with the cat lady. Like, yes. So I want to ask you, you know, what could you suggest to the entrepreneurs that are watching that may be a method or something that you can share with them that might help them, you know, really find their authentic true calling?
Yeah. Well, my big one was don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's many layers around not lying to yourself. Also, let me just check in. Definitely one thing that might be not what a lot of, especially business coaches would say, but in the beginning, when you're kind of, you know, putting your big toe in the water here, don't make your creativity have to make money. Mm-hmm. You can kill your creativity that way. You can splash your creativity that way. In that sense, that's why interior design, the business didn't work for me, because the having to make money and churn out and, you know, pick out paint colors for every, you know, bachelor who had reached a certain amount of, you know, success in his life, took all the passion and all the creativity out. The same thing, you know, a lot of people will be like I have a lot of in-depth background around SEO, marketing, online research, what's appropriate for, you know, how many words appropriate as writing and stuff like that. Still right now, my writing is for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hope it touches people, and I mean for it to touch people. But when I'm writing something or when I'm sharing something, it's not geared towards pulling you in to buy something from me. And in that sense, I think it builds trust. It builds trust with your creative force, and it builds trust with, you know, eventually you most likely you do want your creative soul expression to be seen and witnessed by other people. The other stuff is just going to come naturally. It's going to be an ad after you have this relationship with your creation, with your creativity, with the way that you create. But to start, you know, to like clean off your desk or clean out your office and go, okay, today I'm going to be creative.
Yeah.
And in the afternoon, I'm going to figure out how this makes me money. You will find yourself knocking, you know, up against the wall day in, day out. So initially, I would say, allow yourself, this is what I call art for art's sake. Sometimes we just need to feel that passion so we have the energy to go about doing the other things in our life that we need to.
Right. And that's such a good point you brought up. I mean, you know, if anybody's having trouble in their business, just start doing everything for you, because that's probably going to take out like a lot of things, right? It's probably going to drop a lot of things that you're finding you're doing that you don't like doing. But
Yeah,
you'll be the best version of yourself, which probably will attract the best success in a sense, right?
I agree. I absolutely agree. And again, to the point, you will have more energy. And I think you kind of pinpointed something. When you have more energy, that is when all of a sudden the inspired idea that you were blocking because you were kind of saying it had to come in a certain way shows up. And you're like, oh, thank you. You know, and you know exactly what to do with it
Yeah.
at that point.
So,
You know how to move forward.
well, you actually have a freebie that you're giving that talks all about people finding their authentic true calling, right?
Yes, it's a little less than 26 minutes in entirety. It's a guided meditation of how to guide yourself back to your authentic self.
Awesome. Well, I think that fits in perfectly. We're going to put the link in the bio, in your bio, so everybody definitely have a listen to that. And also, you know, where can people find you online, just so that they can check you out? And
Yeah, so exploredeeply.com is my website. And I would love for you to connect with me on my blog. Like I said, I share a lot of stories, true of my experience and from the heart. I also feature some guest writers, creative features, people doing passionate and creative and courageous things in their lives. Because one of the biggest things for me when I started on this path, I didn't realize I was doing it, but I kept filling myself up with stories of normal people, you know, just like you or I, or normal people who turned their life around and started doing the courageous thing. And when you read more and more stories about that, you realize that the only difference between you and them is just that they've spent a little bit more time. They're a little more ahead of you on the path.
mm-hmm.
And that if they could do it, I could do it too. So that's something that I like to share on my website. But also something that I've just begun this May. I do offer spiritual journeys. So about once a year, I'll offer journey to Machu Picchu. I'm planning to do one to the Arctic Circle because that's a place that's near and dear to my heart. But just this month, I started mini retreats, inviting people to, it's inspired by my Native American teaching and Native American healing arts. So about once a year in Native American tradition, you would go and you would sit with your shaman and you would go on a vision quest and you would reconnect, right, with that inner core, that inner vision that's guiding you on your path. And so I'm inviting people to come on a mini retreat, 2 days overnight in the Shenandoah Valley. You're completely immersed in nature, and it's got an element of body, it's got an element of mind, spirit, and soul in this mini retreat. And you leave feeling decompressed, rejuvenated with energy to go back to your creative drawing board.
Awesome. That sounds that sounds great. So you'll be that information will be on your website soon.
Yeah, that information's on my website. It's actually exploredeeply.com healing retreats.
Awesome.
All about Machu Picchu, Arctic Circle, and the Shenandoah Valley, East Coast. You're certainly welcome to fly from the West Coast. I miss the West Coast. Bring your energy this way.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing event that somebody could not necessarily have on their radar, but take advantage of, right? I mean, it's an eye-opening, it's just inspiring. So
my land, I forgot I say this. My land is 30 acres up against a couple hundred acres of national forest. So in that sense, the healing retreat is an opportunity where, like, if you can't fly to Machu Picchu this year with me, it's an opportunity to spend time in sacred space with Mother Nature and sacred lands.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds awesome. I have one more question for you before we go. What is it that makes you wild, creative, and confident?
Wild, creative, and confident. I'd say being a rebel as much as I can. And that's not so much a rebel against other people, but when I have that little thing that comes up inside of me and it's different than the old fear response. It's like, it scares me so much that I know I have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I know that has been a signal for me to start putting my focus and manifestation power and emotion into having that come to fruition in my life. So the wild part is, I guess I'll admit the secret. The wild part is I don't get too attached to my plans any longer. My very smart plans. So when it comes down to having a 3 or 5 year plan, I have a vision within my head and I have an emotional experience I'm desiring, but it no longer looks like a business.
Yeah.
Plan to me. I am totally open to inspired and divine action. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
Nope, I'm here.
Nope. Okay, good.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. And I mean, you have a wild vibe to you too. You know, you're saying that you're like kind of untethered in a sense, right? So,
and you will get there too. It's not scary when you arrive here. Like that might scare people. Like, well, she doesn't have a plan. Like, how can she not have a plan? It's actually when you get to that place of trust within yourself, there's this strange security in that. Because you kind of you learn that like your very smart plan is not near as amazing as opening yourself to receiving the divine plan for you.
Yeah, because it's a bigger plan and little plans change. So
Yeah.
I thank you so much for being a part of this series, and I'm sure everybody got lots of great tidbits that you've shared out of this chat that we've had. And for everybody, definitely I'm going to put Chloe's information down in her bio. Please check her out. And yeah, and we'll see you again soon. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It's awesome. Wild and creative.
Wild and creative. Bye.